So, okay, I'll give you a story about risk. That 5, 6 years ago, I got an email from a colleague saying, would anybody like to work in Abu Dhabi? And I thought, why not? It was work I could do. It would be paid work. I'm an independent, so a week's worth of training in the sun sounded a really good idea. So I said yes. I then got asked to fill in lots of forms, put my certificates, all my track record, my history of courses. So lots and lots of documentation I had to fill in, submit, send off with my passport, everything they needed, and heard nothing. And I thought, okay, that's fine. And then I get this email in August saying, we'd like you to do a course in Abu Dhabi in a couple of weeks' time. Are you willing, able to do that? And I really, when it came to the crunch, I was thinking, oh, no, I don't think so. It's far too much. It's unfamiliar country. It's a 5-day course. I know nothing about the country. I know nothing about the people. I know I'll have to work with a translator. No thanks. It's too much of a risk. And actually, my husband persuaded me to go. He said it'll be a good experience. And my friends, my colleagues said, it's as long as you be aware of this and this and this, it's perfectly safe. So go. And it was challenging, but it was one of the best experiences of my life, because I learned so much about myself as a trainer, myself dealing with challenging situations, and that increase in my self-confidence that I now think, what was I, of course, worried about? But, it was a risk that I had to take. I really had to go outside my comfort zone, but I knew that it was a really beneficial experience that wouldn't have happened if I had taken a risk. 4 reasons why going outside your comfort zone matters. First one is learning. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And learning happens outside your comfort zone. So you get new experiences, new insights, new perspectives. So learning is absolutely essential for individual and business growth. And the view is that if you're not learning, you're actually going backwards. Then an I can do it mindset. Susan Jeffers, if any of you read Feel Fear and Do It Anyway, the fear is that I won't be able to cope. So I won't be able to cope with any situation. So I won't be able to cope. The fear I had was I wouldn't be able to cope with going to Abu Dhabi. And by going outside your comfort zone, you're actually demonstrating to yourself that you can. And that increases your belief in your ability to cope, to do it. And then you have evidence to refer to. So if I'm ever wobbling, I can say, well, I went to Abu Dhabi. I succeeded in this challenging situation. And this will help bolster your confidence about new outside the comfort zone experiences. Visibility and exposure. You may or may not know that it's visibility and exposure that impacts on success. 60% of weighting in promotion decisions is given to visibility and exposure. Only 10% for performance. Not everybody knows that. Not a lot of people know that. It's so important to be visible to decision makers in your organization. Likewise, if you're self-employed, it's really important to be visible. You have to be seen to be bought from effectively. Now, being visible and having exposure for some people is not comfortable, and it can be risky. This is why I think second to death is the fear of making presentations, because you're visible, you're exposed. Tall poppy syndrome, the fact if you're standing tall, you'll be cut down. It can make you feel a target, but it has to be done, and you've got to be brave. And finally, role model. Going outside your comfort zone matters to your workplace and the wider work environment, because you are a role model. You're inspiring and encouraging other people to have courage, to be brave, to take risks by doing this. So you have the opportunity to be a role model and encourage other people to think, yes, I can do that. So 4 reasons why it really matters, why it is so important to go outside your comfort zone. We'll begin. The second strategy is to carry out a risk assessment. And risk is interesting because you're going to get information from your head, your brain, and also from your body. And ideally, you would bring both of those to the equation in any assessment you're making that is leading to a decision. So this is key to understand. It's part of understanding and making tangible wherever possible what the risk is. So this technique will help you understand your comfort zone and what's impacting on the risk that you're considering taking. And as I say, it's most useful if you do it both physically and mentally because it gives a more complete assessment. And as you can see on the bottom, on the right of this page, there's some numbers 1 to 10. And what I I do this practically in workshops when I can, and I'll take you through it mentally now. But imagine on the floor a line in front of you that is 0 in terms of risk closest to you and 10 the furthest part of the line. And then identify a risk, and you can just have one in your mind's eye, as it were now, your in your brain at the moment, and give it a number. So again, you don't have to share this number. It's for your ears only, your eyes only. Give this risk a number on 0, incredibly low risk, to 10, incredibly high risk. And then physically and mentally go to the number. So you could do this yourself. And I've actually done this in workshops where I have a A4 written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stapled together on the floor, and you can actually go into that number, walk into that number, put yourself physically in that number. And when you go into that place, you know, really get to understand the reasons for the rating, why you've given the number you have. So when they're on the floor, you can go into the space, you can explore the risk, understand why you've rated it, the number you've chosen. And just by allocating it a number gives it a tangible assessment of this perceived level of risk. And then you can further understand it by exploring it. For example, if you went down a number, is it less risky? What's making you say it's a lower risk? And what makes it more of risk if you go up a number? I used this on a workshop, and one lady, she was thinking of becoming self-employed. She was employed in a very well-paid job as an HR professional. And I remember her going and standing there and looking and just really using this information, not sharing it with anybody, but just internalizing where she is, you know, how big a risk it was. And she actually made the decision to become self-employed. And I think, I know actually she gave feedback, it was due to this activity that she actually was thinking it was far bigger risk than it actually was when she actually came and used this technique to assess it. So it's a really interesting tool, useful tool, just to explore any risk you've got. Thirdly, be proactive. Now, being proactive, I really think, is underestimated in terms of the impact on your mindset, your confidence. I don't know if you know, but having some degree of control is a fundamental human need. It's a huge motivator. Certainly it is to me, but to most people, I understand. And it's not having control that for many people makes them feel stressful, makes them feel vulnerable. They say stress is, the definition of stress is the difference between where you are now and where you want to be. And the bottom line is this is not good for self-confidence and well-being. So it's essential to do something, to take some control, to do what you can. It could be researching, it could be taking an action, however small. So I think with Abu Dhabi, you know, it was researching. I knew more about Abu Dhabi, you know, from the websites, what the temperature's like, what the areas are like, what the language is like, what the etiquette and the culture was like. I did a lot of research. It could be taking an action. So it could be a tiny little action, but just by doing some action, it's something. It could be making a request. So it's really just about doing things. And the more control, the more confident you'll feel. And then the more likely you are to take risks that are challenging and not comfortable to take. It's useful to be aware of your personal patterns in taking risks. So when will you make the most effective decisions or feel most able to be proactive? Could be day of the week, it could be time, doesn't matter. But it's being aware of how your body can resource you to do things as easily as possible. So I suppose the comment I would make, it's about really work with your body. So be proactive when you're most resourced, whatever time of day or time of year or time of whatever. But it's really when you need to be proactive. Don't do it when you're physically or mentally tired, or it will take more energy. It's actually having the mental, physical, all the resources that needed just really to help you do that, to be proactive, because it might be that well, it's like going in the flow, you know, it's going to be easier to do. So it's really about being productive, getting it in the muscle. And looking at the slide on the screen, you may see a slide there for you that I actually asked the speaker if I could borrow. And it's the keynote speaker. And he is the HR. So it's really about being productive, getting it in the muscle. And looking at the slide on the screen, you may see a slide there for you that I actually asked the speaker if I could borrow. And it's the keynote speaker. And he is the HR director of loads of hotels. I don't know if it's Intercontinental, but it's a huge hotel, luxury hotel brand, and he's the HR director. And he was, say, the keynote speaker. And as you can see, the title of his speech was "The People Profession 2030 Keynote: Be the Change You Wish to See in the World." And he was advocating, you know, what worked for him and what things he recommended. And he advocated being proactive. And as you can see, it's, you know, saying, take the risk, say, I'll do that. So he said in his job, what served him was actually saying, if there was an opportunity, just grabbing it and saying, I'll do that. Even though it might have been, he felt it risky, he saw it as a risk, he still did it. And it really paid dividends for him. It was a reason for his success. I similarly, I know it isn't, I know the benefits I get from taking risks, so I try and be proactive. And I'm writing a book at the moment, and I sent my proposal off to a publisher who I thought would be interested and got a no. So what I did, instead of going, oh dear, nobody will want it, I actually sent it to some others and actually got 2 publishers who are interested. So it's that, you know, don't let the people grind you down. Be proactive, go for it. There's so many benefits. Is everybody happy with that? Shall I move on? How are we doing?
Yeah.
So next strategy is to have a risk buddy. So do any of you, do you have risk buddies?
I talk, I don't know what you mean by that, but I suppose it means that do you talk to somebody when you've got potential risk, you're thinking it's a risk or an opportunity, and you just want to run it past somebody?
Yeah, absolutely. I went a few years ago to a session at I think it was Festival of Work or one of the CIPD conferences, and it was decision making under pressure. And I thought, this is for me. I want to know how to make effective decisions under pressure. And what I learned was from this Vincent Walsh, he was called, excellent keynote speaker, was that actually we are rubbish at making decisions, and we are even rubbisher at making decisions under pressure. So we have very strong instincts to stay safe, and this affects the ability to make effective decisions about risk. And he shared this true example that after 9/11, people in the USA decided that flying was risky, and instead they would drive. 256 people died in planes on 9/11. Driving instead of flying resulted in more than 1,500 additional road deaths. And apparently, every 12 miles in a car is as dangerous as flying New York City to Washington, DC. So, well researched that as humans, we are extremely poor at effective decision making. And when under pressure, as decisions to take risks usually will be, effective decision making is even more difficult. And one recommended technique to make effective decisions is to have a decision making buddy. So they actually, groups of 4 apparently are the best. Research has shown groups of 4 are best to make decisions because you have not too many inputs, you have a manageable number, but you have 4 different perspectives, which helps to make a more informed and therefore likely to be more effective decision. So you can actually use this buddy, this decision-making buddy, to discuss actions that appear risky to you. And what you will do is obviously have a more objective viewpoint plus another perspective. And like you, I have a couple of trusted friends, colleagues that I can explore situations with, and it gives me more information. It can help make much more objective any issue I'm dealing with them, and also make it less emotional, so I can explore them from a wider perspective. So yes, absolutely. If you haven't got somebody you can talk about risks, ideally if you have 4 trusted friends, then you've got that's the optimum according to Vincent Walsh. But having this risk buddy, just really to talk it through, get this perspective, get different, and just much less emotional and more calculated perspective on any risk. And then finally, in terms of strategy, this is it's called the Cartesian coordinates. These are apparently, but that doesn't matter. But what is really useful, given that the perception of risk as being dangerous potentially, and personal programming keeping us safe as a priority. So there's lots of out there. It's our own body design, it's the environments we're in, it's the some people we interact with. They'll all be saying, oh, risk is not very good. No, don't do it. It's going to encourage you to avoid risks. So it's really useful to have some tools and techniques to explore them, and in particular, the benefits, the potential rewards of taking any risk. So this is a very logical approach. You can do it by yourself. You can do it with somebody else, for example, your risk buddy. So how I often do it in activities is I will ask somebody to, and you can do this now, write down a risk that's in front of you, that you're thinking about. So you could just write risk. It's nice to do in pairs because somebody can do the writing for you. You can just, they'll ask you the questions and write down what you say. So you can very much just be focusing on thinking about the answers. But you write down the word risk, and then you ask these 4 questions. So what will happen if I take this risk? And then you will get some information. You cannot not get some information. Then you ask, what will happen if I don't? Then you say, what won't happen if I do? And then what won't happen if I don't? So this will come in a slide to you. So you will get this as a document, so you can use it as a document, as a template. But this is very much looking at the 4 angles of risk and reward. So what will happen if I do? What will happen if I don't? What won't happen if I do? And what won't happen if I don't? And you can write down the responses for your eyes only, or you can have a buddy helping you with. Now note, you don't have to do any action. You don't have to take action. You don't have to do anything. This is purely information to give you a wider perspective, a more informed, more information, more data to help you actually say, am I going to take this risk or not? What will I gain? What will I lose? Because that's fact. You know, if you take a decision, if you take a risk or not, there's always risk and reward. That's a given. So we have 6 strategies, and now we have an opportunity to you to talk about any of the strategies. This part of the webinar will not be uploaded onto YouTube, so and I'll ask that we keep it confidential, and that you know what's said on the webinar stays on the webinar. And if you want to discuss anything in private, please just direct message me, and I will obviously be happy to talk about that and respond to your queries. But essentially, so you had 6 strategies. Any questions, any comments, any of the strategies appeal to you? Any thoughts?